Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Cathleen Scott podcast. I'm here today with Meagan McCarthy of the Scott Law Team. We're going to talk a little bit about AI today. And I know Meagan has a story she wants to start us off with. So what do you got?
Okay. Yeah. So, hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Like Kathleen said, I have been saving a story that I wanted to tell her. I was saving it for the pod, for the viewers to
Nice.
talk about. So I had an intake consultation the other day. And for people who don't know, do you want to explain what an intake is like at the firm?
Sure. So we have a consultation process where an employee or an employer, an individual can schedule a meeting with a lawyer just to help them get some advice on their situation and help them navigate whatever issue they're having. It's kind of like, I like to call it urgent care for employees.
Yeah. Or employers. We get both.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's different about our intake process than like some other law firms is that they're typically longer consultations.
Yeah, they are.
And you're usually speaking with a lawyer, whereas, sometimes in other places it's an intake person. But I digress. So as part...
You get the real deal with Meagan McCarthy.
Yes, the real McCoy. That's what people say, right? That's it. Okay.
That's a thing.
But part of the intake process is that the client fills out a form to kind of give us a heads up of their issue or what they want to talk about. And I recently had a client come in on an intake that wanted me to review a contract. And on his form, he wrote, "My friends told me I should just use AI to review my contract, but I thought maybe I should have a lawyer take a look at it." And I said, "You're a smart man." So that was just something that I think that's becoming more common, that people are relying on AI more, but I have some concerns about it.
Yeah, of course.
To say the least. So I thought it was something, that we should talk about with people and, maybe discuss.
I think it's important too that AI will tell you what the contract says and summarize a document. That could be helpful, but it doesn't tell you how that document gets applied to law. Like that's just not something AI can do, right? Or to tell you how many times if you go in front of a judge, this issue will be like this. And so that there's the missing piece of it. I mean, I confess that I have used AI to summarize a document, just mostly out of curiosity to see how well it did. But yeah, it's the legal piece of it. That is frightening, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with using AI to summarize something. But if someone is thinking about signing something as significant as an employment contract, I wouldn't rely on AI to do that.
No, but I think it's great for things like, summarize this document, tell me how many days notice I have to give to terminate a leasehold or something like that. And of course you want to double check it, but at the same time, there's a place. It's just, it doesn't supplant an attorney.
I agree.
I actually think that lawyers who use AI, especially moving forward in the future, will be the ones who have a job as opposed to lawyers who are just like, oh no, all forms of AI is evil and that sort of thing. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think there's a place for it. But I think sometimes AI, like we're all aware, can miss some of the nuance. And it's also picking up on our own biases when we write in questions. So I think that's another reason to have a lawyer look at it because we're coming in as a neutral.
Yeah.
The other concern that I have with AI, and I mean, it's a concern with contracts, but also just legal questions, is the issues that we've seen with AI hallucinating case law.
I know. Well, that is scary, right? And just so people understand what that means, like it's just making things up. I mean, they're calling it a hallucination, which sounds like something cooler than that, but really it's just made up fairy tale. It's absolutely fiction.
Yeah, they're citing cases like Baskins versus Robbins, Benz versus...
Which don't exist.
Right.
It's crazy. We should talk about Workday too. So Workday is a case out. It's pending right now in California. I think it's the Northern District of California. Don't quote me on that. But Workday is a third-party provider that allows employers use Workday to help them find an applicant for a position.
Okay.
And so the plaintiff in the Workday case, he brought a claim against Workday because he said he applied for over like 2,000 jobs and didn't get an interview for any one of them because the AI was screening him based on their sort of baked in criteria, and that kind of discriminated against him. And it is now set up to be like maybe one of the larger class actions. The class was certified. It has to pass a motion to dismiss. And so it's happening. And so I think from an employment law standpoint, it is interesting to see people might not appreciate how often AI is being used in job determinations and hiring, and how from an employer standpoint, that might actually be discriminatory.
Wow. I won't quiz you on the case like a law school professor, but do you remember like how it discriminated against him, like on what basis?
So there's a number of different cases pending.
Okay.
And so the Workday case taps into an idea that the criteria that's being used, the algorithm, might use a word like strong. And it might think that someone who is a female isn't strong. These are the types of things that the algorithm does. There's other cases out that are pending now. One uses like facial recognition software, and it claims to be able to tell who's lying. So on its face, it uses your facial muscles and your reactions to questions to decide whether or not you're truth-telling. And so there's a whole class action against that, for that case, based on the fact that like anyone who has any type of neurodivergence is going to maybe not have the same affect or affect as somebody who, is different, right? And so that's other examples of how it's being used. I know when my youngest son was looking for a job, I gave him like the worst advice, which I was like, hey, you should put your picture on your resume and talk about what makes you unique and how you stand out from others. Worst advice, because the types of jobs he was applying for, I think he was 19 at the time, were not jobs they were looking for that. They had like an algorithm. They were using Indeed. So then we got smart, and I told him to use all the words in the job description they were advertising for and put them in white ink and submit his resume. So when the algorithm would search, it would pick up those words.
So like metadata kind of like
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, AI is here. It is everywhere. And I think people need to know that there's some good, there's like with everything. We need to, I think our food just got here. So AI is here, and it's here to stay, right? And so I think it's interesting to talk about what people need to know from an employee perspective, but also what employers need to know. Some states like California and Colorado and New York actually have passed like consumer legislation to say if they're going to use AI in decisions like hiring or purchasing of products, that they have to disclose that. And this whole like global market, that becomes like very serious, right? And how are you going to do that? And so I think it's kind of fascinating. And I think some of the states that are getting ahead of it will have to keep an eye on that so people know, how to do that.
Yeah. And I'm curious to what extent, like if you're using AI for anything in those states, when do you have to disclose it?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I understand that if you're using it to weed people out, but if you're using it to summarize applications, is that still something?
I think that might fall in, like for Colorado, their law is much more restrictive. That might actually fall into that category.
Wow.
Now, also, like if you're purchasing, like if you're getting a mortgage and they're going to use it to like screen loan documents or produce things or determine what credit rating you get or all these, that's the type of consumer issue it could be. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. It'll be kind of exciting and fun to watch.
Yeah. So Kathleen, are you familiar with the term ship? Like when the kids are saying like they ship something?
No, I feel like I thought I was until you asked the question, so maybe you better explain.
It's like the spelling bee, right? When those geniuses are like, can you use it in a sentence? Like the language of origin.
Yes.
Okay, so my understanding is that Gen Z, which I'm not a part of, like if they really like when two people are dating or they're a couple, they'll say like, oh, I ship that. Like I ship them.
Okay.
Like a relationship.
I feel so much cooler now that I'm going to try this out in a sentence later when I go out later tonight.
Yeah. Like a relationship. Okay. So anyways, you know who I'm
like a shipping container.
No.
Oh. I missed it. I don't get I'm old.
Don't. Okay. I said it's like a relationship and you were like an old wooden ship? Like no.
Okay. So it's a relationship, not a shipping container, like I said.
Correct. Okay. Anyways, do you know who I'm shipping these days?
Who?
Pamela Anderson and Liam Neeson.
Huh. Yeah, they're going to be a good couple, I think.
I just both really want them to be happy. But something that I wanted to talk about with you is there's a nice little employment law twist because they met in the workplace.
On a set. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I feel bad for people. Where are you supposed to meet somebody if not for school or work? But now there's all these like restrictions on like your ability to do that.
I think that is a good thing. And I think
the restrictions or meeting people at work,
just all of it.
Okay.
No, I'm teasing.
Okay.
I'm teasing. I mean, I understand that, people meet people at work and I do have friends and stuff who met at work and they're very happy together. But I feel like most people honestly meet online these days. I'm going to be honest.
I don't think that's a good thing.
You don't?
I don't.
So I guess what I'd ask, like, if you're an employee and you do meet someone in your workplace that like you think you're interested in or like that it may be reciprocal, how do you navigate like pursuing a relationship?
Right. Because if you ask the person, they say no, that person's going to feel harassed. So you can never really ask more than once. I mean,
Right.
that's kind of like, right. But first, before you even ask, I think you have to consult the employee handbook because some companies actually have like a no fraternization rule. You can't
That's
even,
a good point.
Yeah, you can't even have a romantic relationship. I also think there's some pretty clear guidelines that if you're supervising, there should be no relationship between a supervisor and a subordinate, a direct subordinate,
Right.
even an indirect subordinate, frankly.
Yeah.
Like if that person has control over employment decisions, they probably shouldn't date anyone.
And why is that? You can't help who you fall in love with, right? Why does it matter if someone's a supervisor?
Right.
And someone's...
So the concern in the workplace is that the balance of power isn't equal between the boss and the subordinate employee. And so therefore we worry about consent. Can the employee who is the subordinate employee really say no to their boss, right? Because they might feel pressured because that's their boss. And so I think what we worry about is the hallmark principle in a sexual harassment claim is what? Welcomeness, right? Whether there's consent and whether the conduct is welcome or unwelcome. And so I think it gets blurry when the boss is like, hey, babe, can you da-da-da-da-da-da?
Yeah.
And then the person might feel like, they don't want to, but they also feel like if my boss is asking me, maybe I can't say no.
Right.
And I think that's the real problem. But look, if it happens, you fall in love with someone in your workplace, the thing to do is just don't keep it a secret and then change the positions up so that you're no longer in that line of control.
Right. And when you say like don't keep it a secret, are you thinking like Skywriter? Are
Yes,
you thinking
Skywriter. That would be great.
This is from my generation, making it Facebook official? Or are you saying like you should probably tell
I think you should
HR
tell
or another
HR,
manager?
disclose it, and then be like, hey, because there's like sometimes when it gets complicated is when they break up. And by then it's like too late to do anything about it. But if it's new and you want to continue the relationship, you tell HR, be like, listen, I know you can't help who you fall in love with. I'm really like this person. It's mutual. We want to disclose it to you and talk about what can we do to like change up job positions, duties, to make sure that we're not violating any rules or making anyone else feel uncomfortable.
Right. And I would imagine that also provides the boss a level of protection.
Right.
Right? Or the supervisor.
Well, and you had that case, so it can work in both directions, right? I kind of talked about it from the employee perspective, who's the subordinate employee, why that could be, it might not feel welcome. But you've had other cases where you talk about that because that's an interesting issue where the supervisor is dating someone, they might give them a preference. Which could affect other people.
There's case law out there that says like if there's sexual favoritism among like a supervisor and subordinates, and there are employees who I guess are like not willing to participate in the sexual favoritism or aren't the object of the supervisor's desire, that in and of itself can support a hostile work environment claim.
So in your case, there was a situation where a female employee was having a sexual relationship with her male supervisor, but all the other employees in the department, most of whom were male,
correct,
were getting like the shaft, essentially. Like they were getting the worst schedule, the worst deals, not the same opportunities to make commissions. And so in that situation, the subordinate employee was getting the benefit of the relationship.
She ain't complaining.
Right, yeah.
It's everyone else.
The hostile work environment was really from the men who were being kind of disenfranchised because they couldn't have a sexual relationship with their boss because they didn't play for the same team.
Cut. I'm just kidding. And I think that's an interesting perspective because I imagine, a less seasoned employment lawyer or an HR person who isn't as familiar with certain situations would worry about that woman and say, is she going to complain?
Right. But I think they were worrying about the wrong stuff.
I think they were blindsided when a man complained and said, I'm not willing to have sex with my supervisor.
I think that's why it's important that HR has to be neutral in their approach, right? It isn't just females who are being subject to a hostile work environment. You have to look at the big picture. Yeah,
and I think that goes to show, too, it's not just the person who's being pursued by the supervisor, right? If other employees are noticing it and they know that someone's getting more favorable treatment because of sex and what they're willing to do, right? That can be a hostile work environment or a gender discrimination claim.
Right. And I'm just happy that we got some relief for that gentleman in your case because it just was so painful.
It was egregious.
And then he complained and then got fired. Correct. Or was forced to quit. Essentially was forced to quit.
Started getting written up for things like that.
But this conversation started with you talking about workplace relationships. But those are some of the issues, right? People can get unfair treatment. We worry about whether somebody can really say no. And there's really fallout when the relationship ends.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Have you ever watched the show The Office? I hope.
Yes.
I hope you have. I mean, I keep thinking about...
Wasn't she the HR director?
No.
Oh.
No. It was Michael Scott and his manager, Jan.
Right.
And HR made them sign like a document saying that like they're in a relationship to disclose it. And Michael Scott framed his. He didn't want to give it back to the HR person.
But I think in that situation, didn't they have a bad breakup?
Oh, yeah.
And then he kind of went psycho.
Well, was he ever really normal?
Yeah, that's true.
I think she did. And then I don't know if you remember, there's that episode like called The Deposition.
Yeah.
And she was fired or she left the company or something. And then he was testifying. It was a whole mess. And it was interesting to see like issues that we actually deal with play out on TV.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's always where it gets messy is when there's the breakup.
Right.
And that's when the real HR issue arises, frankly, because then somebody, especially if somebody doesn't want it to end, and then they keep, because that can be harassment. Like,
right.
So when the relationship ends and one person's like, no, I don't want this anymore. The other one's like, but I do. And that they keep pursuing, that could be harassment if they continue to pursue it.
For sure. And I wonder too, not to bring up another current event, but that whole thing with like the Coldplay concert and they were having an affair and all that. So
there was like two members of like high level people. It was like
people knew.
People with OOs after their name.
I think she might have been the HR
director. And like he was like a COO or something. He
was like
CTO maybe.
Yeah. And I think other people at the concert.
Did they get caught like on like the Coldplay equivalent of like a kiss cam? Is that what happened?
I don't think there's a Coldplay equivalent. I think it just is the kiss cam.
Yeah.
But
and they were both married. So this was
both married. Yeah. So
that looked pretty consensual to me. I don't know. We're worried about harassment in that situation, but more like the morality of it. So that's an interesting question, right? Can you be fired for that? I think in certain states you can, especially if you're in a very client-leaning job.
Okay.
And that becomes like some contracts have a morality provision in it, where if you're engaging in conduct that could look negatively on the company based on your certain moral issues like adultery or cheating or things like that.
Right.
That's a basis to terminate.
And I mean, don't forget Florida. I mean, at will,
I know.
You can fire them.
I know.
There's no protection for cheating or for having an affair.
You can bring your gun to work, but you can be fired for any reason.
Leave your wife at home.
No, I guess you can't bring your gun to work. What am I saying? You cannot bring, an employer can have a policy that says you're not allowed to bring your gun to work, but you can leave it in your car.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
Just like you can leave your wife in there.
If you're going to date people at work, sign a consent form and possibly frame it.
A copy.
Okay.
Give them the original.
HR should be looking for weird spin-offs from that relationship.
Yes.
And maybe how other people are treated.
Yeah, I'm curious.
And if you're going to cheat, don't do it at a Coldplay concert.
I mean, words to live by.
Yes.
But I'm just curious if you've ever had a case where you've seen a relationship that started out as consensual and then one person wanted to break up. And then, like, how did that evolve?
So I actually had a case where the CEO of a company fell in love with one of the higher level salespeople. And they had a relationship for a while. He was in love with her. And she was like, I'm done. And he just started, like, pursuing her, love letters. It was very like Sex and the City, where, like, Big wrote all those love letters to Carrie after they broke up.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing he was doing, like sending her like love letter after love letter. And she's just like, everywhere she'd go, he would show up at the grocery store.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And
so like stalker.
It was stalker-esque. And she wasn't afraid of him, but she was like, I can't work here anymore.
Yeah.
And so we negotiated a very nice severance agreement for her,
okay.
And a package to move on. And there was what could the company do? I mean, he was like texting her. He was like sending her love letters. It was like the evidence was overwhelming.
So if you were that HR person and she came to you and was like, listen, like we had a relationship, we broke up, but like he won't leave me alone. Like, what would you recommend that the company do?
I think in that situation, the HR should have sat down with that company executive who was doing that and be like, look, either you're going to lose your job or you're going to cut this out. We get that you love her. We know that your heart is broken. Take some time off.
Yeah.
Get it straight. Move away. I read something like a 30-day. It's like, how to get over a breakup in 30 days.
Like a cleanse, yes.
And then just keep your job if you want to. Make it a choice for him so that he has to make that choice. I think that is a good way to regulate behavior, especially at that level.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's good advice.
Yeah.
I mean, and then from there, if he's not able to abide by it,
Then
then
he has to lose his job,
yeah,
which is bad for the company because that's their high-level executive. So, yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, when anybody gets into a relationship, they never think about breaking up.
Right. Yes, it's not like they sign a prenup in that situation, right? When they're just
Right.
dating. It's interesting. But I do feel bad for people because, like, work is a common place to meet people. And you don't want to feel like you can't ask somebody out or, like, think someone's pretty. And these are real issues. Like, people are afraid to be like, you look beautiful today. And
Well, you shouldn't say that.
I think you can say you look very nice today. I think it's like, what
Yeah.
a pretty dress you have on, or what a nice suit, or your hair
Yeah.
looks nice. So I think that's probably okay. I think also tone and delivery are what matter.
Yeah.
Like if you look at somebody like, hey, you look really nice today. Like they're
Yeah.
a dessert and a counter. Like, you know, like I feel like you're saying they're delicious looking.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's the right tone.
If you're
But-
like breathing heavy and peering from around a corner and you're like, you
Yes.
look beautiful.
But I don't want to work in a workplace where people can't tell each other, you look beautiful, or you look nice, or hey, you know, look like you had a great vacation. I don't know. Like I think don't I want to be told nice things.
I think there's a line, and I do wonder somewhat if this. I know I keep talking about generations, but I do wonder if it is somewhat generational. Like to me, when I was like I was in law school, I was interning somewhere, and I had a member of the staff, much older, who wasn't very nice. I was very stressed. I was working on a tough assignment. And he came over and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You really got to smile more. You're so pretty." And
It just creeps you out.
I wanted to crawl out of my skin.
Yeah.
Whereas other people may have been like, wow, he cares about me.
See, and I think what we need to do is teach people when in that moment to find their voice and be like, thanks, creepy. Like
Yeah.
sometimes a one-word response like, that's super creepy is all like encouraging people how to handle that. Because I feel like the more people work remotely and the less they're interacting face-to-face,
Yeah.
the more and more awkward it's going to be. Like I worry about that a lot because we really don't interact that much in the office as much. Even like in our own, we're very remote.
Yeah.
And so, you don't want it to be awkward. But yeah, what's awkward for some might be comfortable for others, Yeah.
I think we have to be respectful of that too. Like in this situation, he was much more senior. I didn't want to make waves. I didn't want to.
That's the thing, the balance of power.
Yeah.
I think a coworker to coworker telling somebody you should smile more, probably not a great idea.
Yeah.
Don't be creepy, but probably not harassment. But boss saying to subordinate employee, yeah, that's tough. And so for anyone out there who's going through something that's awkward or uncomfortable, document. If they send you a text, don't delete it. And if you ever need legal advice, feel free to talk to the Scott Law team.
Yeah, we're well experienced with creepers.
So fun talking about workplace relationships today. We've really covered the whole gamut from do's and don'ts and how it affects everybody, supervisor liability, and how not to get caught cheating on your spouse at a Coldplay concert.
Yeah, I ship this episode.
Thank you so much for joining us, Meagan.